I'm Jim Taverna, and I welcome you to my home and to my layout. I'm very happy that you've come to see it. This is the Northern Central Railroad division of the Pennsylvania Railroad. The Northern Central was purchased by the Pennsylvania back in the mid-1800s, and it's a line that actually started in Baltimore up through Harrisburg, up the Susquehanna to this area, which is what I'm modeling, and then on to Williamsport on the Philadelphia and Erie connections, and all the way to Buffalo. So there's a lot of traffic that came down this line from the Great Lakes area, eastern Great Lakes, and also there was iron ore that went over from the Great Lakes to Bethlehem. The line over my head is a branch called the Shamokin branch that went from Northumberland Yard and went on up to the Mount Carmel area with the iron ore, and also brought other heavy traffic from the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania area over here to the Susquehanna River. We're here now at the west end of the Northumberland Yard, which is the main feature in the center of the layout. And this is the branch line operation coming down the hill. But I wanted to give you a little background on what brought me to this point. I've been modeling since I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I built models of trains and planes and all kinds of buildings and vehicles and so forth. I even flew gasoline planes back when I was about 10 or 11 years old. But I found that trains were of the most interest to me, and I started in HO, which is half the size of these trains. And I did that through about 1985, 86. This layout is in a basement of 3,000 square feet, and I've used about 1,900 square feet for the layout itself. I also built a very nice shop, which I always wanted, and I have a spray booth and a separate painting room on another portion of the basement. So it's been an ideal location for me, and I'm really thrilled with it. When I got in here, I wanted to build a prototypically based layout of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I wanted a heavy traffic main line and other features, and so it took me about 2 years to get both the location of the trains that I wanted to model and to design the actual track plan. So this is Northumberland, Pennsylvania, and it has a heavy trafficked double track main line, and we also have a branch line that comes out of here and goes up to Mount Carmel. This is the terminus overhead loop, which represents Mount Carmel and a connection with the Lehigh Valley. The railroad is set in the summer of 1956, which was an ideal time from my perspective because it's a combination of both steam and diesel operation. The railroad practices are reflective of the previous 100 years, and it was sort of the zenith of the railroads just after World War II, and when they were running wood equipment that dated to 1900, but as well as more modern steel equipment that was produced in the mid-50s. The yards reflect the fact that railroads were still a dominant transportation factor, so trains are heavy and frequent. And here we have a train that's running both steam and diesel together. It's a milk train, so that gives you an idea of the diversity that I have by being in this time frame. Let's talk a little bit now about the railroad. I'm standing in about the center of the railroad. You can see that the yard goes over my right shoulder for quite a distance, and then it goes off onto the main line. And then the branch, you can also see, comes out at that end, and then it comes up here along my left shoulder, rising up to the Mount Carmel loop over our head. I started building this and made it a little bit more complex than I planned, but it takes about 5 or 8 fellows to operate the layout. I originally started by building the benchwork around the walls, and then we sort of painted the sky blue, and then I built these dividers, and as you look down, you'll see that the sheetrock walls can fold on themselves, and I learned how to make bendable sheetrock and put that up. Now we're standing and looking at the engine facilities that we have on the railroad. We have a lot of trains that operate here, and so we have a lot of motive power to move them, and we're going to have to make a lot of changes in motive power. And Northumberland was known for its large engine facilities. Right in front of me here is the diesel facility. And it's not complete yet because I have to finish building the fueling installations and get the sanding towers all aligned the way they should be. And then forward closer to you is the steam engine facilities, which includes an operable turntable. And the tracks are in. We have what we call the garden tracks, and those are the tracks that would be outside of the roundhouse. This railroad, the branch ran through a long valley, so we had typical Pennsylvania hillsides on the other side of the valley. So I've got photographs then made that showed the hillsides, and in fact, this town on the hill over there is actually Scranton, Pennsylvania, but I couldn't find a picture of Reed that I could use, so I've used Scranton as a stand-in. So we have the hills coming down, and we have now the transition into the town of Reed. And now the scene changes, and I've used different photographs to move us into the country. And it peaks in a curved wall way down at the end to show that we're going out into a long distance. And then the branch line is in the foreground. We've come across, and the challenge we had was covering a doorway, so I had the photographer make me a section of photograph that matched generally the pictures on either side, and I put a covering and then put in that photograph. So we're in now transitioning, and on this side, the railroad comes into Sunbury, Pennsylvania, and Sunbury is a large manufacturing town, so I had the photographer, he had a good picture of some building complex we did there, and then we blended it into the forest. And he did such a good job with the photograph that I made trees to match the color of the forest, and you can't tell what's 3D and what's 2D back where those trees are. And then we come up to the end of the photographs, and we're transitioned now back to our painted backdrop. Well, we've talked a lot about the layout, and I've given you a good background, I think, on what you can see now, but there's more to come in that over this wall is where I'm building the last two large towns on the layout. So that'll be a major feature of the other room that we haven't visited today. And that's probably about 2 years out before I'll be able to get that done. But the one thing that we can say about O-scale is that things take time. Given that you have to make everything, there's not as much available off the shelf. So I want to thank everybody for joining me here at the layout, and I want to thank my helpers, Paul and Ed, and for their time in coming and running the trains for me. And I would just want to say this is why model railroading is so much fun, is because you meet such great people and everybody's willing to give you a hand. Plus, the layout keeps on giving. It'll never be finished. So, thank you.